Founder of Upload VR in 2014. We launched it to bring this technology to as many people as possible and show them the potentials of it. We do events, we write an editorial, and try to disseminate knowledge to as many people as possible. And I continued on from that into Kaleidoscope, where I traveled all around the world, went to 10 cities in 9 countries in 6 weeks. It was crazy, fast, and crazy amazing, but we were throwing virtual reality events in all these different countries and all these different cultures. And I noticed something as I was along this journey over these 2 years. I noticed that it was these same types of experiences that were bringing out this sort of childhood joy in people when they jumped in and when they got out. And it wasn't games necessarily, it wasn't stories, but it was creation tools. It was things like Tilt Brush. When they got in and they started moving around through space, they just couldn't help but smile. They'd wait 2 hours in line for a 5-minute demo, and then they'd go and talk about that 5-minute demo for a week. And I realized that this is so much different than anything that I've seen in my life. This reaction, this sort of method of creation. It was so unique to me. And so I put myself, over the past few months, through this sort of, I don't know, you can consider it like a VR philosophy boot camp, where all I did for like 3 months was read and write and do VR for like 3 months. And the world didn't know I existed at that time. And I spent probably at least weeks in VR, if you combine all the hours, and something kept coming up to me. So like the same thing kept reappearing, and it was the same topic, and it was the same idea, and what it was language. It was this idea of what a language is to humans and how we came into it. It was this exploration of what it means to tell a story through words or to tell a story through pictures. Like, these are all different forms of communication, but communication is language, and language is thought, and thought is, I don't even know what it is, right? It's just there. So I kept exploring language, and I realized something when it comes to VR. For my battery, voice dies. No, it's not the battery dying. It's gonna pop. Okay. I realized that language is an art, and that art is a language, and both of those are tools. And you might have this image in your head of like that left brain, right brain, how distinctly different they are. Like the language center is the left, and then this creative side is the right. And it's not that binary. I don't think humans are that binary. I think it's much more complicated than that. And I think that we keep saying the word language. You probably heard it in every talk today, like the language of VR, the grammar of VR. Like, why do we keep using this word? Why do we keep going to language? And so I kept exploring it, and I started very early, right? We didn't always have a capacity for language as humans. Like the current humans we are today, yeah, but it's something that we evolved into. But before that, it was a lot of body language, it was reading people, our ability to analyze somebody's emotions just by looking at them was incredibly high before you had language. And it was because it was a life or death situation, you know? If you couldn't read the person next to you's body gestures, it could mean death for you. So that's why we evolved into this capacity for language, why we are these social beings. It's something that took a lot of time, right? And you can even see the shape of the brain changing as we go. That front side of your brain starts getting a little bigger, right? And that's when our language started coming in. It's like 30,000 to 100,000 years ago that we developed this capacity for language. And that was another point for me, where I was realizing we existed before language. We evolved into language. And language, this ability to make noises and have you understand this sort of universal grammar, syntax, this is something that is relatively new for, if you look at the history of the world or the universe, It's a blip in time in 100,000 years. And we're just now starting to reach a point where we're getting into new forms of language. And that's really, really interesting to me. What that implies to me is something much bigger than just like a tech shift. It's a humanity shift. It's huge. And so there's this definition of language that's given by Google. It's a method of human communication. Well, that makes sense, right? We talk to each other. We use language to communicate. It's a system. It's something that is bound by a country or a region. Well, that makes sense too, right? Like, we have so many diverse languages. Why is that? Well, let's explore. But it's also a system of symbols. So, like, you write Python or you write JavaScript. That's a language that you've learned. It's just symbolic code. It's little things that are representations of something else, right? And I promise that I'm gonna tie this back into VR, but bear with me, because I think it's something that it's worth thinking about a little bit deeper than just passing it as we need to figure out the language of VR. Well, let's ask why. Why do we need to do that? What does it mean when we do figure that out? So this is how it's like a system of communication, right? Like, I have an idea, and that idea to me manifests in my mind as a word or a thought or a sentence, and I say it, and then you receive it, and you download it, and it becomes something to you. But what I'm saying could be heard by you differently than it's heard by you, and that's because our imaginations, our experiences are different. When I say, you know, bloody, one person might think of a like brutal murder scene, another person might think of a doctor's room, another person might think of like a rare steak. Like, the first thing that pops into your mind when you hear a certain word is different for everybody. And so this form of communication is very dependent upon how we actually structure our words, and we grow into that. We get better at using our words to express ourselves as we go on through time. We start with this sort of binary, mythical understanding of the world, where it's like hot or cold, or warm and or soft and hard, right? And it's as a relation to our own body, right? Like, if that's soft, it's softer than my body. If that's cold, it's colder than my body. If it's warmer than my body. This is how we relate to the world. We have to at a young age. It's too complicated otherwise. So we start with this binary, and that's where you have that left brain, right brain picture. But it's not that easy, because we grow into more abstract uses of language, irony and sarcasm and metaphors and all these things that we use to get points across. We see like a beautiful person walking down the street, we say, ooh, they're hot, right? But that is maybe false. Like, maybe physically they're actually cold, like maybe they're chilly. But like, we say hot because that's the only thing that we can use. It's a word that, it's a metaphor that's like showing something that isn't really there, but it's sparking your imagination. So I say that because I think that there's ways of looking at the world that we are totally oblivious to, because we're bound by our language. How many of you have like parents or know multiple languages yourself? Raise your hand. Okay, that's a lot of you. Have you ever just like had this feeling, you're like, you know, there's no word in English, but in Chinese and Spanish and whatever, like, it's this, right? And you know exactly what it is, but you just can't find that word in English. Well, that happens all the time, and it's because it doesn't exist in English, right? But your mind, your thoughts, are bound by the words that you are able to use. So this was fascinating to me, this whole idea of language and how it affects the way that we actually think. And I kept exploring, and then I came across this guy, his name's Daniel Everett. Have any of you heard of Daniel Everett? Okay, well, it's good. He's a linguist, and he went into this tribe, the Parea tribe. And the Parea tribe was stumping linguists for forever, and they couldn't find a syntax, they couldn't find like a grammar that made sense, that was comprehensible. And what he discovered is that they were trying to attach it to an idea of a world that didn't exist for the Parea tribe. Parea tribe has no words for color. They have no words for numbers. They have no words that signify past or future tense. Everything in their language is only in the moment. There's no abstract distinguishing words for things light or dark. It's just light or dark. When someone dies, it's like there's no sorrow, there's no nothing. They just get buried, they go on with their lives, there's no grief, and this is really weird. But the reason why is their culture, the way that they needed to adapt to survive, they didn't need those things. They just needed to figure out what is the thing right now that is about to either eat me, or I need to go and kill, or I need to go and be with. Like, it was only about the moment. So their language was fundamentally different. Their thoughts, the way their minds work, fundamentally different. And then here's some other languages, right? How many of you know any of those languages? HTML, or you write code, or let's just say Photoshop. Let's consider that a language. It's not something that that has symbols, but it has different inputs that you can put in, and something comes out, right? It's a language. And all these things have outputs, and that output it's a form of art. And so that's where it got very interesting to me with VR, is how is language contributing to how we create and understand the world within VR. And maybe VR is more than a medium, but it's actually more like us. It's evolving into this more human-centered way of understanding the world. So language, in my definition, it's a tool. It's a tool for thought. It's a tool for understanding our imaginations. It's the structure by which really everything in our realities exists. And a fun little exercise to play with is this is Kiki and Blubra. And which one do you think is Kiki? Just think about it. Yeah, that one's Kiki, isn't it? Like, it has to be Kiki. Like, there's no other way that is Kiki. It just doesn't make sense to you, right? And what's interesting is 95% of people, no matter what culture they're in, know that that's Kiki. Why? Well, I mean, 3-year-olds who can't even read, they know it's Kiki. And it's because sound, language, it has a form in our minds. Like, it has a shape, it has a texture. It's something more than just the word. It goes beyond that. And that is a beautiful thing. Like, the fact that we can communicate through imagery, right? And yes, words, but the idea goes beyond the word. It symbolizes something bigger. And so that brings me to art. Like, that's a great example of how our language is so embedded in us, in our brain matter. It's something that evolved in our brain matter that no matter where we are, like, we still know that's Kiki, right? And art is an expression of our creativity. It's an expression of our imagination. If language is the tool for communicating what's in our imagination, well, art is a physical manifestation of it. It's the way that we actually express what's going on internally when words can't seem to find all of the answers to it. And how many people have ever seen a piece of art and you're like, oh, it spoke to me, right? Like, oh, that art, it just speaks to me. Well, it's because it actually is. It's just in a different language. It's something that is a little bit out of the ordinary for our more left-sided brain oriented culture. Like, we do want to express ourselves through art. The problem is that the languages are really hard to learn when it comes to expressing art. This is famous Starry Night, and this was done on oil and canvas. And that's not an easy medium necessarily. It's natural, but there's not much flexibility. It's not malleable like our words are. I can't make up a new, brush stroke or color. It's just not like it's there, right? But the fact that you're still able to create so much beauty with it is amazing. And then here's an evolution of art when more technologies. So this is made in like Photoshop or the Adobe Suite. This is by Android Jones. And it's very metaphysical, very hippie, very trippy. But you couldn't do this on oil and canvas. Like, you needed a new tool. You needed a new piece of technology, a new way of expressing, really a new language for you to work with in order to create something like this. And then you have this, very short, but this is something that someone made in Tilt Brush. It's Starry Night, but let me play the game. It's a little short. The difference is that it has dimension, right? I can move through it. I can go jump into that. And now I'll try to somehow move back into the presentation. Sorry. This is really lovely. Alright. Alright, we're back. Okay, so art is a manifestation of our thoughts and imaginations. Like I said, if language is the input, it's the means by which we think, art is the expression of it. And that is how we sort of communicate things that are beyond what the constraints of our language provide us. It goes into something more human. So the point here is that we're evolving with technology. We're evolving with the tools of thought, with our tools for sense making, with our tools for knowledge work. These things come into our lives, VR comes into our lives, mobile comes into our lives, and it changes everything. And you've heard it over and over again. You feel it when it does enter your life. And I think that every single time we're evolving, we're getting closer and closer and closer with technology towards that human understanding that we so desperately crave. Right? We don't want to have to learn how to use technology. We just want to do it. We don't want to learn how to do anything. We just want to be able to do what we want. We want to manifest our imaginations at the speed of thought. There shouldn't be a learning curve. Every learning curve that there is, it kind of puts a damper. It puts a cap on the amount of richness that we can get from people who maybe don't have access to a computer or something that you would have access to here at Berkeley, right? And the reason why this is all possible, the reason why we're able to understand so deeply is because of the medium, right? The medium itself provides the means by which we can understand the world around us. So if the medium is our mind, and that tool for understanding our mind is language, well, if VR is a medium like our mind, and our tool for understanding that is Tilt Brush, it's Oculus Medium, it's Quill, it's Mind Show, it's these tools of expression, well then what does that make these tools? I think it makes them more than just a tool. I think it makes them something closer to a language. And the reason why they're so powerful is because as humans we understand the world in different ways. We understand it with our eyes, visually, orally, with our ears, tactically, right? We understand it kinesthetically. I can move, I can dance, I hear music. Sometimes I just can't help but move, right? It's your body's kinesthetic understanding of that song. We also understand it spatially, three-dimensionally. And with technology so far, we've kind of been blocked off. We haven't had access to all these modes of understanding. It's been sort of something that we've had to work with. Yeah, we have phones and we figure them out and they're great, but we're working with them. They're not working for us. A lot of times we're constantly just trying to make them better, and it's because we're lacking these modes of understanding. You know, tactile maybe you can say with the phone, it's white, it's yellow. It's maybe that swipe is enough, but maybe not. But you definitely don't have any sort of kinesthetic understanding on mobile or the web. You can't move through it, right? And definitely not spatial, because it's not a 3D medium. It's 2D. You're flat, so you can't think spatially with it. But with VR, what they are, we have all of them. We can move through it. I can feel things. I have agency over my hands. I have the ability to hear things not just through a speaker, but actually 360 all around me, like I do in the real world. And this is what makes it special. It's not that the medium is just immersive and we can feel presence. There's a lot of buzzwords that go on in this industry.